My father's pension was meant to support me after his death. But my sister had redirected it into her own account. The day I exposed her, the family saw who the real thief was. The clerk's expression changed before she even spoke. She angled her computer screen away from me just slightly, but enough to make my heart tighten. When she finally looked up, her voice was gentle, almost too gentle, as if she were trying not to startle me. Your pension account hasn't shown activity for several months. For a moment, the sounds of the bank, printers humming, people chatting, shoes tapping on the floor, faded into the background. I stared at her, waiting for her to correct herself, to say she'd read the wrong line or clicked the wrong button. But she didn't. She kept her eyes on me, steady and apologetic. I asked her to check again. She did. The result didn't change. A strange stillness settled over me. My father's pension was the one thing I never questioned. He had arranged it carefully, making sure I would be supported. He trusted the system. And I trusted my sister, who insisted on handling the paperwork after he passed. I thanked the clerk even though my voice felt thin, and stepped outside. The sunlight felt too bright, almost harsh, as if the world had shifted without warning. I stood on the sidewalk, clutching my purse, trying to make sense of what I'd just heard. My pension? Inactive? Redirected? How could that be? As I walked home, memories began resurfacing. Small moments I had brushed aside, moments that now felt heavier. After my father died, my days became simple. I woke early, made tea, and tried to keep myself busy. The pension was supposed to help me stay steady. My sister had stepped in quickly, almost eagerly, offering to handle everything because she said I was too overwhelmed. At the time, I believed her. I was grieving. I didn't have the energy to question anything. She filled out forms, made phone calls, and told me not to worry. She even said she'd set up online access for me later, once things settled. I didn't push. I trusted her. But now, walking down the street with the bank's words echoing in my mind, I realized how much control I had handed over without thinking. When I reached my neighborhood, I saw my neighbor, Mrs. Hale, sweeping her porch. She waved at me with her usual cheerful smile. "Did your pension come in?" she asked. "Mine arrived right on time this month." Her words hit harder than she knew. I forced a smile and nodded, but inside something twisted sharply. If hers arrived on time, why hadn't mine? I walked the rest of the way home with a growing sense of unease. My sister's car was already in the driveway. She was in the kitchen when I entered, humming softly as she chopped vegetables. She looked up with a bright smile. "You're back early. Everything okay?" Her voice was light, but I noticed something I hadn't paid attention to before. Her phone was placed face down on the counter, and every time it buzzed, she glanced at it quickly, almost nervously. She used to leave her phone anywhere, unlocked, unconcerned. Now she guarded it like a secret. "Yes," I said, keeping my tone calm. "Just a quick errand." She nodded and went back to cooking, but I watched her hands. They moved too fast, too tense. She wasn't as relaxed as she pretended to be. I walked into the living room, trying to gather my thoughts. That's when I noticed a stack of papers on the coffee table. Nothing unusual, she often left things lying around. But as I stepped closer, she suddenly rushed in behind me. "Oh, don't touch that," she said quickly, sliding the papers under a magazine. "It's just old bills. Nothing important." Her voice was sharper than usual. Defensive. Almost panicked. I didn't argue. I simply nodded and walked away, but inside, something shifted. A quiet suspicion began to take shape, something I could no longer ignore. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the bank clerk's words. I kept seeing my sister's face when she hid those papers. I kept hearing Mrs. Hale's casual comment about her pension arriving on time. Around midnight, I got up to get a glass of water. As I stepped into the hallway, I heard my sister's voice, low, tense, almost whispering. "No, she doesn't know. I told you I'm handling it. Just stop worrying." I said I'll take care of it. My name slipped out of her mouth in a hushed tone. I froze. She must have sensed movement, because the next second she ended the call abruptly. When she turned and saw me standing there, her eyes widened for a split second before she forced a smile. "Oh, you scared me," she said lightly. "Just talking to a friend." Her voice was too sweet, too rehearsed. I nodded, pretending to believe her, but inside the uneasiness grew into something sharper. Something colder. The next morning I returned to the bank. I needed clarity. I needed to hear the truth again without the shock clouding my mind. A different clerk helped me this time and she confirmed everything. The pension had been redirected through a signed request. A request I had never made. I asked to see the date. She showed me. It was filed shortly after my father's funeral. I walked out of the bank with a quiet determination settling inside me. I didn't feel angry, not yet. I felt focused, alert, as if a fog had lifted and I could finally see the edges of something I had ignored for too long. I wasn't ready to confront my sister. Not without understanding the full picture. Not without proof. So I made a decision. I would watch. I would listen. And I would uncover the truth, quietly, carefully, and without warning her. Because whatever was happening, it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was deliberate. And I was finally ready to face it. I walked home from the bank with a strange calm settling over me. It wasn't peace. It was something sharper, something that made every sound around me feel clearer. The rustle of leaves, the distant hum of traffic, even the soft scrape of my shoes on the pavement. All of it felt louder, as if the world wanted me to stay alert. My heart was heavy, but my mind had never felt clearer. Whatever was happening, I needed to see it fully without excuses or wishful thinking. When I stepped inside the house, the smell of dinner drifted through the air. My sister was in the living room laughing at something on her phone. Her laughter was light, almost carefree, and for a moment I just stood there watching her. She looked so relaxed, so confident, as if nothing in her world was out of place. That confidence only strengthened my resolve. Someone who felt that secure had something to hide. She noticed me and smiled. "You're home early. Want some tea?" I was just about to make a cup. Her voice was warm, but I could hear a faint edge beneath it, something I hadn't noticed before. I shook my head gently. "No thank you. I'm fine." She studied me for a second longer than usual, as if trying to read my thoughts. I kept my expression calm, almost indifferent. She eventually nodded and went back to her phone, humming softly. I walked past her, feeling her eyes follow me for a moment before she looked away. That evening, I moved through the house quietly, observing small things I had ignored before. The way she kept her purse close to her. The way she locked her bedroom door when she went inside. The way she checked her phone every few minutes, as if waiting for a message she didn't want me to see. Each detail added another layer to the uneasiness growing inside me. The next morning I returned to the bank. I didn't want to rely on one conversation or one clerk's explanation. I needed clarity, solid, undeniable clarity. A different clerk helped me this time, a young man with a calm voice and patient manner. He pulled up my account and I watched his eyes move across the screen. "Yes, ma'am," he said gently. "The pension was redirected several months ago. There's a transfer request on file." I asked to see the request. He printed it out and handed it to me. The paper felt heavier than it should have. My father's name was there, but the signature, it wasn't his. It looked similar, but the strokes were wrong. Too stiff. Too forced. My breath caught in my throat. "Can I have copies of all statements from the past year?" I asked. "Of course." He printed them one by one and placed them in a neat stack. As I flipped through them, a new account number appeared repeatedly, one I had never seen before. It wasn't mine. It wasn't my father's. It was something entirely unfamiliar. I thanked him and left the bank with the papers pressed tightly against my chest. The air outside felt colder, even though the sun was shining. I walked slowly, absorbing each detail, each number, each date. Every page deepened the betrayal, but it also sharpened my determination. When I reached home, my sister was on the phone laughing again. She waved at me casually as if everything in our world was perfectly normal. I went straight to my room and spread the papers across my bed. The dates lined up too neatly. The transfers were too consistent. Someone had planned this carefully. I opened the drawer where we kept old documents, birth certificates, medical records, and the folder my father used for important papers. I sifted through them slowly, searching for anything connected to the pension. Some papers were missing. Others were out of order. A few had been placed in the wrong folders entirely, as if someone had rushed through them. Then I found it, a transfer request form tucked between unrelated documents. My father's name was written clearly, but the signature was the same stiff imitation I had seen earlier. My hands trembled slightly as I held the paper. My father had always signed his name with a gentle curve at the end, a small flourish he'd had since his school days. The signature lacked that warmth. It lacked him. A memory surfaced. My father sitting at the dining table telling us that family should always protect each other. He believed in trust. He believed in honesty. He believed we would look after one another when he was gone. The thought made my chest tighten. I placed the forged form beside the bank statements and took a deep breath. The truth was forming piece by piece, and it was impossible to ignore now. Over the next few days, my sister behaved as if nothing in the world was wrong. She planned a weekend outing, chatted with relatives on the phone, and even suggested we go shopping together. Her cheerfulness felt forced, almost exaggerated, as if she wanted to distract me from something. One afternoon, while I was sitting in the living room reviewing the documents again, she walked in with a bright smile. "You know," she said lightly, "you really shouldn't stress so much about money. Everything always works out." Her words were casual, but they felt like a jab. I looked up at her, keeping my expression neutral. "I'm not stressed," I said softly. "Just organizing things." She nodded, but her eyes lingered on the papers for a moment too long. Then she turned away, humming as she walked into the kitchen. Her confidence was almost unsettling. It made me even more certain that she believed she had covered her tracks. But she hadn't. That evening, when she left to visit a friend, I gathered every document I had found: bank statements, transfer forms, the forged signature, and the unfamiliar account number. I placed them neatly in a folder, smoothing the edges with my hand. The folder felt heavy, not just with paper but with truth. I carried it to the dining table and sat down. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes every small sound echo. I stared at the folder for a long time, feeling a mix of sadness, anger, and resolve. This wasn't just about money. It was about trust. It was about my father's wishes. It was about the dignity I refused to lose. As I sat there, a thought settled firmly in my mind. There was a family gathering coming up. A gathering where everyone would be present. A gathering where the truth could finally be seen, not whispered or hidden. I placed my hand on the folder and closed my eyes for a moment. The time for silence was ending. I sat at the dining table with the folder resting beneath my hand, its weight pressing into the wood as if it carried every unanswered question of the past months. The house was quiet, but inside me something steady had formed, a calm resolve layered over a deep, aching sadness. I wasn't angry in the loud, explosive way people expect. My anger had settled into something quieter, something that made my thoughts sharper and my steps more deliberate. I knew what I had to do, and the upcoming family gathering would give me the space to do it. When the day arrived, the moment I stepped into my cousin's home, the warmth of the gathering washed over me. Children ran through the hallway, their laughter echoing off the walls. The smell of spices and fresh bread drifted from the kitchen. Relatives chatted in small groups, catching up on old stories and new worries. It was the kind of lively, comforting chaos that usually made me smile. But today I walked in with a different purpose. I held the folder close to my side, tucked under my arm like a quiet secret. My heart carried a storm, but my face remained calm. I greeted everyone with a steady smile, letting the noise and warmth settle around me like a blanket I didn't quite feel. My sister stood near the window, laughing with two of our cousins. She looked relaxed, confident, completely unaware of what was coming. Her laughter rose above the chatter, light and carefree. Watching her, I felt a strange mix of sadness and clarity. She had no idea that the truth she thought she buried was about to surface. As I moved through the room, relatives approached me with their usual kindness. My aunt placed a gentle hand on my arm and asked how I'd been feeling lately. I told her I was managing, offering a small smile that didn't reveal the storm beneath it. A cousin handed me a cup of tea, insisting I sit and rest. I thanked him, though my hands trembled slightly as I held the warm cup. All the while my eyes drifted back to my sister. She glanced at me once, offering a cheerful wave, completely unaware of the folder I carried. She walked over a few minutes later, her steps light, her smile bright. "You look tired," she said softly, tilting her head. "Are you sure you're all right?" "I'm fine," I replied, keeping my voice even. "Just thinking." She nodded, though her eyes lingered on me for a moment, searching for something she couldn't quite find. I kept my expression calm, letting her see nothing but quiet composure. She eventually drifted back to her conversation, unaware that her world was about to shift. I waited for the right moment. Not rushed, not dramatic, just a natural pause in the gathering when conversations softened and people settled into their seats. When that moment came, I stood slowly, placing my cup on the table. My voice when I spoke was gentle but firm. "Everyone," I said, "may I have a moment?" The room quieted gradually, like a wave pulling back from the shore. Faces turned toward me, curious and attentive. My sister looked up from across the room, her smile fading slightly as she noticed the folder in my hand. I gestured for her to come stand beside me. She hesitated, confusion flickering across her face, but she walked over with a cautious smile. "What's going on?" she whispered. I didn't answer her directly. Instead, I looked around the room, meeting the eyes of the people who had known us since childhood. My voice remained steady, though I felt the weight of every word before it left my mouth. "I need to share something important," I said. "Something that affects me, and involves my sister." A ripple of murmurs moved through the room. My sister stiffened beside me, her smile tightening. I opened the folder and pulled out the first document, the bank statement showing the redirected pension. I held it up so everyone could see. "This," I said quietly, "is my father's pension account. It was supposed to support me after he passed." My sister's eyes widened. "Why are you showing that?" she asked, her voice strained. I continued, ignoring the tremor in her tone. "For months, the pension didn't reach my account. I thought it was a mistake. But it wasn't." I laid the statement on the table, then pulled out the transfer request, the one with the forged signature. My voice wavered slightly as I held it up. "This form redirected the pension to another account. An account that isn't mine." My sister's face paled. "That's not, I didn't." She stumbled over her words, her confidence cracking. I placed the forged form beside the statement. "This signature," I said softly, "is not my father's. I knew his handwriting. I watched him sign documents my whole life." Relatives leaned in, whispering among themselves. My sister shook her head, her voice rising with panic. "It must be a bank mistake. They mix things up all the time." I looked at her, my voice calm but heavy with truth. "I went to the bank twice. 2 different clerks confirmed the same thing." Her denial grew frantic. "Maybe you misunderstood. Maybe they printed the wrong papers." An uncle stepped forward. "Why would the bank print the wrong papers twice?" My sister's eyes darted around the room, searching for support. "She's confused. She's been stressed." I cut her off gently. "I'm not confused." I pulled out the final document, the list of transfers to the unfamiliar account. This account received every pension payment for months. And the transfer request was filed shortly after our father's funeral. The room fell silent. My sister's face crumpled, her denial collapsing under the weight of the evidence. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Relatives began asking her questions, soft at first, then firmer. She stammered, contradicted herself, tried to blame the bank, then the paperwork, then me. But every explanation unraveled as quickly as she offered it. I watched her quietly, feeling a strange mixture of sorrow and release. This wasn't the victory I imagined. It wasn't satisfying. It was simply necessary. When the room finally fell silent again, I took a slow breath. "I didn't do this to punish you," I said softly. "I did it because I deserve the truth. And because our father deserved honesty." My voice trembled, but I didn't hide it. The vulnerability felt real, and it felt right. "I don't want revenge," I continued. "I just want peace. And I want my dignity back." With that, I closed the folder, tucked it under my arm, and stepped away from the center of the room. The air felt lighter around me, not because the pain had vanished, but because I had finally stopped carrying it alone. I walked outside into the cool air, letting the breeze touch my face. For the first time in months, I felt steady. I felt whole. And I knew I had done the right thing, not just for myself but for the memory of the man who raised me to stand up for what was right even when it hurt.